Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melissa Lieberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Today on the podcast, I'm so thrilled to share with you a conversation I recently had with one of my clients, Maria Balcazar Tellez, and she shares with us so much insight into the way she's running her business, how she's established really the values by which she wants to run her business and make decisions, and how she spends her time. And I can't wait for you to hear all of the behind the scenes and how she's been really able to transform from employee-based thinking into the type and quality of thinking as a business owner. And she really we talk about this concept a lot on the podcast, but Maria is really able to bring it to life for you in very tangible ways so that you can see what it looks like to go from that employee type mindset and running a business in that way into a CEO and business owner level mindset where making decisions about pricing and shifting from hourly based pricing into value based pricing. She shares as well how she's really established a go-to sought after reputation in her industry based on the relationships that she's cultivated and her thought process around those relationships and what's led to her creating this very well-known reputation for herself. So we cover so much ground in this conversation, really talking about the way that she's transformed thinking and running her business and created this business, as she describes it in several different ways, creating the business she actually wants intentionally versus kind of falling into a business that she doesn't necessarily want to be running or have joy from. So to hear Maria's perspective on what it's like to transform your business from burnout into something that's really mostly filled with joy, I think you're going to take away so many actionable strategies and tips and next steps for yourself and your own business. So with that, let's dive in. I can't wait for you to hear what Maria has to share with you. Her name is Maria Balcazar Tellez. I hope I said that right, Maria.
That's perfect.
She has graciously agreed to come on the podcast and tell us so much about her business and herself. And I can't wait for you to meet her. So with that, let's get started. Maria, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Before I jump in, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm a huge fan of your podcast. And in fact, that's how I ended up finding you. So it feels like a full circle coming around and now being on the other side. To tell you a little bit about myself, I am an independent consulting and I partner with foundations, universities, and different teams that are really interested in applying systems thinking. So systems thinking is really my jam, applying systems thinking, particularly in the food system. And so what this looks like is that I really help teams define, co-create, and really execute their strategies in order for them to make impact in the food space and be able to tell people about it. So what is the impact that they're making? So that's what I do.
It's amazing. You work with, I won't list your clients out, but so many well-known foundations and universities, really helping them to get ahead of the curve and be innovative and really meet all of the current and upcoming food system challenges that we have as a society. So impactful for what you do. Tell us about, how did you become a consultant and independent?
Yeah, so I actually work as a consultant in a San Francisco innovation firm for about a year and a half. And life sort of took me from San Francisco to England. And so one of my major projects also at the time was coming to a close. So it just felt like a good time to take some time off and just close my chapter in California. So I did this really awesome and fun and hard at times solo hiking trip through the California area. So I went to the Sierras, Yosemite, Sequoia, and throughout the entire time I was really thinking, okay, so now I'm totally shifting to the other side of the pond. I need to figure out what I'm going to do next because I closed my chapter with that innovation firm for the time being. And it kind of all came together after that trip. I met with a good friend who was a consultant. I was doing some consulting work. And funny enough, within a couple of days, somebody within my network from a former project reached out saying, hey, like I have this really cool project. I really want to talk to you about it. I wonder if you know anyone that could help advance this project. And so it sort of ended up happening in which it just makes sense. It all came together. And I took the plunge and went into independent consulting, and I haven't looked back ever since.
So lucky for those of us who have fallen into consulting in some form or fashion. And you may share the same thing. For me, it wasn't my idea, to be honest with you. And, it's like for you, someone's reaching out. And so it's just so interesting to get that little nudge and then to realize this whole world opens up of possibility. So I'm so glad that happened and you came into owning a business and really loving it the way you do. Speaking of which, so tell us a little bit about why are you passionate about what you're doing and the types of work that the clients that you're serving?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question, right? Why do we do what we do?
Yeah.
I think for me, I find myself that I really love a few things. I think the first one, I really appreciate complexity. And so stepping into the space that is complex and is challenging and just making a lot of connections in the spirit of figuring out what could be a solution or how might we solve that problem or shift the needle in a way that will make impact. And that really comes back from when I was a kid. Like, just to give you context, I studied university agricultural engineering, but I also studied philosophy because neither felt like the right fit. And somehow that made it work. And I feel like that's really what I get to do my day in, day out. I am in the space of food and agriculture because food really connects all of us. Everybody can really tap into what food is all about. And growing up, food felt like some of the most magical moments in my life, like learning from my grandma, putting seeds in her windowsill, and then a few months would be a plant, and then a few months later there would be strawberries, and that felt just like magical. And so a lot of that curiosity and passion brought me to the food space and brought me to the food space particularly around systems thinking and systems change, which has been such a lovely trip. I think what I'm most passionate about, to answer your question, is just the people I get to work with. So from students to I work with hog farmers, with immigrant farm workers, foundations I get to work a lot with these days, innovators. It's just been really fun. Everybody can connect to food, and I feel lucky to be in that space.
Amazing. Tell me, along those lines, you become very sought after for what you do, Maria, and really well known in the industry that you serve and for the types of engagements that you work on. So tell us a little bit of behind the scenes. How did you create this reputation and network for yourself? And what recommendations might you give other consultants who are wanting to build up that same type of reputation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I would say for me, the honest answer is that I love the work that I do and I really commit to it. So I really give my work my 100%. And I would say in terms of reputation, it's just being committed and delivering good work and having a good work ethic probably gets you to 70, 80% of the way. I'm just staying curious. I think that's the other piece. I've been able to cultivate that network mainly first and foremost because I've stayed really curious and interested in meeting humans that are doing interesting work and are really advancing hard questions and thinking about ways that we can shift current systems to just serve us better. And so by staying curious, connecting with people and really trying to find connections, I think I've been able to build that reputation and build that network of incredible humans that do incredible work.
Yeah, I think something you're saying here is so important is just being passionate and curious and wanting to have those conversations without a specific result in mind. You're not engaging in those relationships because you want a client contract. That would be an amazing result, right? But at the end of you're really thinking about it in terms of How can I have dialogue about the areas that I'm so interested in and really create relationships with people who are interested in similar things? And from that, then amazing opportunities come to you without you having to force it.
Yeah, for sure. I think something that just came to mind as you were saying that is, I love when you at some point you told me it's like, hey Maria, like don't build a business you don't want to be part of.
Mm,
And so I think it's very aligned with what you just said around I get to work with humans that I feel excited to be working with in projects that I'm really interested in. And so having that ability of building what you want and really diving into a space you feel excited about will definitely help you build that reputation and be a sought after consultant.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. If you look at your business so far, what have been the biggest challenges that you've faced?
Hmm. Biggest challenges. I would say probably the number one is just shifting that mindset from being an employee mindset to a business owner mindset, which is something that I've learned through your podcast and with working with you. It's very different how you engage in your day to day and how you wake up and how you even think about your day when you shift into that business owner mindset. I think that for me has been the biggest challenge. And both from like a tactical perspective, I have to be really intentional about my time and how long things take because now I have other tasks that I never really thought about as a business owner. And so really balancing my time, balancing my projects with that feels important. And so it's a challenge and something that I continue to learn how to do better. And then the other one is even just tactically, just the mindset piece. Sorry, not tactically, but I guess more from a mindset perspective, just the mindset piece is huge.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have a few examples, Maria, of what you might have been thinking as an employee that is now different for you as a business owner and what impact that's made for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say as a consultant, as an employee, I had one project and I had a main client, and my entire sort of day in, day out revolved around really delivering this incredible project that I was being part of at the time. I would say now shifting into the business owner mindset, now I have to be really intentional that I have multiple projects, and that's by design. I want to be playing at different levels, right? So I work with some clients that are super strategic, and I work with other ones that are very tactical and on the ground and implementing things within days, right? So I have to, from a tactical perspective, be really intentional about how I use my time and how I schedule and organize myself. Because in addition to working with projects, I also need to be doing a lot of work for my business. So from finances to taxes to making time for coaching and learning how to actually move my business in the right direction and thinking short term and long term and what do I want out of my quarter? What do I want out of my year? So all of those questions take time and it's different. I guess I personally was never thinking about that when I was on the other end as an employee. So yeah, it definitely requires more time and more intention, I would say.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the biggest changes or advancements that you've seen in your business since you started it.
So I would say the first one that comes to mind is that I now set clear goals and a clear vision out of what I want to accomplish, which is something that I learned by working with you. I think I had a vague idea when I started as a consultant what I wanted, but I probably hadn't just sat down and really thought about the different verticals of my business and what I wanted in terms of my day, in terms of my quarter, and what were the different metrics or targets that I was striving towards. And so putting all of that in paper and also owning the fact that I get to decide what that looks like, which sounds silly, but at the time I was really thinking in relationship to my previous life as an employee. So actually, I had the opportunity now to decide and make that up as I wanted to. And so that's probably one of the biggest advancements and areas of growth. Like I continue to learn and really trying to keep myself accountable to myself that I get to choose. It's not the other way around. So I think there's that dance of I've made a lot of advancement and I know that I continue to grow and continue to advance in that space.
Yeah. without sharing any details. You get to share all the details. I'm not going to share details about your business, but just being able to go from leaving corporate and having that experience as a corporate consultant and being able to evolve into a business where you've really grown in all the different metrics that you would measure against the business in such a short amount of time has been so fun to be part of and to watch that evolution and to see how you've been able to think about your business in such a strategic way, turning away clients when you need to and when you want to, shifting pricing, so many different areas of your business that have evolved. Yeah. Tell us a little bit around that in terms of pricing. If it's okay to say, you've evolved your pricing over the course of the last year or so from more of an hourly based pricing and starting to evolve into value-based pricing. And that's such a trend in our industry. So for whatever you would be comfortable sharing, tell us about what your thought process has been, what might have held you back from moving into value-based pricing, and how that's starting to gain traction for you in your business.
Yeah, such a good question, and one that I think it's the question that many of us as consultants asks ourselves, right? Like, how do I navigate pricing? What is the right price, the fair price, the price that I want, and what is out there, right? Like, what are other consultants going after? And so I think from my perspective, it's an area that, just going back into time zero, I was thinking so much about, hey, like, I have this really great individual that is reaching out from my network. They really want to work with me. It's kind of like falling on my lap. It's exciting work. I really want to do it. So I just dived into the computer and did a bunch of research that kind of led me to nowhere concrete. It was actually really hard to just get somewhere concrete. I started to reaching out to friends, hearing different numbers, hearing different approaches. And I sort of landed on hourly rate pricing, mainly because I think that's what I knew. That's what many people were doing. But definitely working with you, thinking through how I shift into value-based pricing has been really helpful, because it really helps you think about your work and the value you're bringing to your clients, and almost also the entire beginning to end, sort of the phase or the cycle of the work in a very different way. And so I've been able to do that with a couple of different clients, and I find that it has been really helpful. Some of the things that are most helpful that I've been practicing as I go into pricing is really thinking about, not just from my perspective, but also from the client perspective and from the perspective of the value that is being brought into the world through that work. And so I think there's multiple dimensions around pricing that oftentimes get overlooked. Mm. And so really thinking about pricing from different perspectives has been really helpful for me.
Yeah. What were your concerns about moving into value-based pricing?
I think my quickest concern was, for me at first, is like, well, I don't know how to really calculate my hours. And if I undercalculate, then I might end up putting a lot more time. And so that I might end up coming out of this project losing or in the negative, which it felt like risky. And it didn't feel like I had the tools at the moment to really put together a good budget to deliver a work that I felt confident with. But working through that process with you and asking a lot of very specific questions around how to think about it from different perspectives, doing some level of scenario planning, and getting really concrete as to what is the work that needs to be done, what are the deliverables, how much time will that take, and just doing that assessment really helped me get into that value-based pricing model more confidently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The behind the scenes, right? Because we don't just go from charging hourly over to charging on value. It's never a straight line. There's a lot of mechanics behind it, like you were just describing, and there's a lot of mindset behind it too, which is what you've described as well. Yeah. If you're willing to share, let's talk a little bit about coaching together. So tell me, why did you decide you wanted to hire a coach? How did that all come to be? You mentioned hearing me on the podcast, but tell us more about how this came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say for anyone that is out there listening right now thinking, oh, maybe I should reach out. Maybe I should find a coach. I would so recommend it. That was me literally over Christmas break last year. My projects were coming to an end for the year. I was planning for the following year. And I just felt like I didn't have a lot of the tools, or maybe I had some blind spots. I felt slightly unsure about how I was planning and how I was setting myself up for the following year. So I, as any good researcher, went online, looked for a lot of resources, found podcasts, and just started to consume a lot of content. And my favorite podcast was yours. So I literally, podcast after podcast, I probably spent a week and I listened to like 30 podcasts. And I was like, okay, so I think this is what I need. Like, I just literally would do all the homeworks that you put on the podcast, the workbooks, all the activities. And I just, even just doing that felt like, oh, I have a hold on what I want and what I need and how to proceed. I decided to move ahead and reach out to you because it felt useful. Like, just the podcasting on itself felt like a huge resource. And so I figured it would be the right step to make the investment. And it has really been such a pleasure working with you. I really mean it.
Oh, thanks, Maria. I feel the same. So lucky. I love this podcast so much because it connects me to clients like you. So super grateful for this forum. Is such an amazing thing to have. So glad it brought us together. Tell us, whether it's me or someone else, tell us a little bit about what it's like working with a coach. So many of us don't really have that context. I know I didn't. I always thought a coach was for maybe a CEO or whoever could afford Tony Robbins. I don't know who that is, but somebody. For me, I didn't have a coach for a really long time until I hit a bit of a crossroads myself, and then learned it's really something that any of us can have. So I'm just curious, as you think about working with a coach, how would you describe that experience?
Yeah, for me, I would say that working with a coach has been so helpful because it's really having not only a thought partner that you can really just put your questions that I think would be hard to put to anyone else front and center and tackle, but also just having an ally. So just having someone that can really take a look at the work that you're doing and how you're thinking about it and give you a perspective that feels is no bullshit, for lack of better word. It's like, okay, so like this is what's on the table and this is what the challenge is and this is how we can break it down, and there's different ways to do it. Sometimes it's very tactical working with a coach or working with you, and sometimes it has been very much so around the mindset question, right? So what is it that is blocking me here or making me question or inhibiting the way I'm going to advance or take the next step? It's just been really helpful to just have someone to walk that through and have an ally that is just really rooting for you and helping you every step of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. What a fun job I have. Just being an ally and like rooting you on and calling you out when it's helpful, but always from the place of being on your side. That's so fun. I love the way you described it. You've touched on this a little bit, but is there any other shift that stands out to you that you've experienced by working with a coach?
I would say perspective. Like, it's just given me so much perspective and just the ability to just move quickly when I'm facing a challenge or a question that I would otherwise just get stuck on. I love something that you bring sometimes around how many revolutions of a thought is that gonna take before you just like, you need to move on. And it has been really practically helpful to just be able to see that challenge, that question, that, at times insecurity, see them, name it, address it, and then just move on. There's just so much work to be done. And I feel lucky. I get to do a lot of really cool work. And sometimes it's just really helpful to just address it and then move on. And then with knowledge, not necessarily putting it on the side and brushing it on the side, but really just taking a look, addressing it, and then move on with knowledge and with more wisdom and lighter. You just get to move in a lighter way.
Yeah. Is there anything that surprised you in working with a coach that you might not have expected?
Maybe how easy it is. Like you, I never really thought about coaching is for CEOs, like you said, but he's actually super approachable. He's easy. It's just practical. just, yeah, it's great.
And really, it's funny that you just say that because we are CEOs. We have this vision of like, oh, the Disney CEO or the Amazon CEO are the ones who have coaches, but we're CEOs and we have our own coaches here. So that's another way to look at it too, as we're now talking about it. That just has dawned on me.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We're CEOs, but at the same time, it's such an incredible gift, at least, from my perspective, working with my own coaches, having that gift, like you said, of perspective, of looking at, it always seems to come back to the same challenge, the same mental challenge in so many different ways. It seems like, I don't know if you have this experience, Maria, when we work together, but I know when I'm working with my coach, I bring her something, it feels very new and very revolutionary, this problem. And as we talk through it, it always comes back to some self-doubt or inadequacy, or it always comes back to the same thing. And she always sees it before I do. But I'm like, damn, I thought I had something new here today. And we're like coming back to the same place, just in a slightly different way. And over time, you chip away at that. But it's just really fascinating to have that experience and someone else to really be able to see things from their perspective and, like you said, make it lighter. Yeah. So
yeah,
fun.
I loved you just said that, because yes to all of that. And there's also the humor piece. Like sometimes I just love how I bring something that feels really big and feels like, like daunting. And then we just talk about it and we end up laughing. And it's like, oh my God, somehow it felt much bigger than it actually is. And through humor, it's just like, okay, so it's totally doable, totally something that I can chip away, like you said, and just move forward with lightness and with action, right? So a lot of like action driven advice, I feel, is like what I experienced from coaching.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of, when I first started out, I felt like making a mistake was one of the worst things I could possibly do. It would ruin my reputation. It would solidify that I probably shouldn't be doing this in the first place, that I was ill-equipped. And it just felt like a gut punch every single time I made a mistake. And I know in my journey in working with coaches and then ultimately becoming a coach, like you said, being able to look at things and not take them so seriously and not make them mean that you're not capable or talented or achieving what you want to be achieving can be such a weight off of your shoulders. Yeah.
Yes. Love that.
Love that. Okay, my friend, let's switch gears again and talk more about your business. So one of the things that I think you challenged, that we've talked about this before, so Maria knows I'm going to say it, that you were really on the verge of burnout and kind of overworking and overextending yourself. And so tell us a little bit about how you've been able to manage through your business to not be so overutilized and get yourself into a place where you're having more fun running your business. You're not as burnt out. You're not as overwhelmed as you were toward the beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things when I think about that shift. I think the first one is just really being able to plan out. And it's just as easy as giving yourself some buffer and planning in a realistic way. When I started my work, I felt like I was Superman and I could do everything. And I would just go into it with the biggest passion and interest. And yet, it was possible. I did it. All the work got done and it was with really great quality. But I think at times it was at the expense of feeling really tired or working really long hours, which again, it brings me back to that advice that you share with me is what is the business that you're building that you want to build and be part of? And so that wasn't it. It really wasn't it. I wasn't shifting into independent consulting to not love it. If you are not loving it, then you should just question what are aspects that maybe you have the power to change and shift in order to make you love it a little more. And so for me, it has been really tactically better planning, more realistic data, and then practically just really stepping into putting some boundaries for myself because I love the work that I do. I love the clients that I collaborate with. And sometimes I get overly excited real quick. And I say yes before I think about the implications or the reality of the numbers of the number of hours that are already being planned. And so being intentional about how you're planning and putting boundaries for yourself so you can manifest the business that you want and the days that you feel excited about felt really important. And definitely another area of growth for me, something that I continue to learn how to better implement as I continue on this journey.
Yeah. Like you said, it can be really simple in terms of setting up the structure and the mechanisms to create those boundaries for yourself. And then it gets a little bit trickier. It may not be easy necessarily. It's simple, but easy. And giving yourself that grace, right? It's like, look, I just went on vacation. I might have worked a little bit more than I was expecting to or wanted to. And what have I learned from that so that I can implement any additional safeguards for the next time? And not setting ourselves up, I think, for this pass fail or perfection, A plus that I think most of us as independent consultants fall into that trap of wanting to do everything perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something also that just came to mind as you were saying that is, yes, there is putting the frameworks in place. And a mistake that I was making early in my business was that I was actually overcomplicating how I was planning for myself. I was just putting way too much data that was unnecessary and overcomplicating what really was just 40 hours a week, 10 dedicated to my business, 30 left. How is that going to get split? I was doing so much more complicated math that ended up being just confusing for myself. So I think there's also that piece about having systems in place, but not overcomplicating what can be easy and actually stepping in and doing what is harder, which is not typically the numbers.
No.
The mindsets.
Yeah, I think that's so fun. We're so good at creating and addressing complicated problems and challenges that our clients have. And so then taking that into our own business and trying to make it so much more complicated than it needs to be. I love that you point that out because I find that so many consultants fall into that trap. And in a lot of ways, we love making something really elegant and sexy. But then at the same time, it could be just that it's a great way to avoid, like you were just describing, the hard thing, which is actually saying no, which is actually protecting that boundary in whatever way, or telling a client that you can't start with them until the next quarter or whatever the thing might be based on that structure that you set up for yourself. Yeah,
yes,
that's
absolutely.
so fun. What a great point, Maria. Tell us a little bit about your thought process as you kind of along these same lines and boundaries. What is your thought process and your filter when you've got this work coming in and trying to decide what clients you're going to take and what clients you're going to maybe defer, or what clients you'll turn down? What does that look like for you and your business?
Yeah, great question. I would say that three things I very much still think about. I think the first one is, what is the makeup of the current projects and clients that I currently have? And what is potentially this new opportunity coming in? Because I do work in systems thinking, systems change, I really get to play at different elevations, if you will. So I'm intentional about having at least one or two projects that is more high level, longer term, strategic, than having something that is in the space of sort of the middle, which is really around co-creation or engaging communities, or something that is really about building those connections and relationships. And then really intentional about having at least one project that is very much so on the ground and it's more tactical. And so for me, that's something that I intentionally want to stay very flexible in. And so I make that part of my process when I see what projects are possible at any given time. So I'm playing at different levels. I would say the second one is just length. So I work as a facilitator, which I love doing. I love facilitating convenings, meetings, and sometimes I get invitations to do a one-day event or a one-week event, or maybe even just facilitate a virtual session, which oftentimes are really fun, but take so much time for what the deliverable is, which is really a one type of event. So I'm intentional about knowing that and acknowledging that. And if it's really exciting, I take it. But if I have a lot of other longer term projects, I tend to prioritize those just because those feel really fun and feel like longer term allows you to get to be with a team and really get to know the work. And then I would say the third one is just how passionate I am. Who are the people that I'm going to be working with and how does that feel? and how excited does it feel for me to be part of that engagement. And so those three elements really help me decide how I'm going to be spending my time, which at the end should be in service of how I want to be spending my day. And also in service, of course, of the work that I'm doing. Yeah. So all of that combined helps me decide and determine who I'm going to be working with.
It's such a great combination of tangible filters and intangible filters as you're making those decisions for your business. It really boiled that down, because so many times we might make decisions to take clients based on finances or some other factor, and then we end up being miserable because of like that third element that you just described, the connection with that particular client or lack thereof. Yeah, so good. Tell us a little bit about the vision for your business, Maria. What do you want to accomplish in the next few years?
Such a good question. I would say what I would love to accomplish, and it's my motto every day, is just staying in a place in which I can engage with interesting teams that are doing impactful work and where I feel like I can really provide value and support. That brings me joy and that brings value into the world, right? And brings impact into the world. So that's the vision for my business, is just staying true to myself and staying true to what I believe and bringing value and impact into the world, which, to be honest, is easier said than done. It's easy to get carried away with certain things. And so really trying to bring those values and bring that vision and mission core and center feels really important for me. So that's what I'm working towards day in, day out.
Yeah. One of the things that stands out to me for you in your business is how you have so much passion for what you do and the clients that you choose to work with, and just really are clear on the values that you want to operate your business from, and how that really, those become a guiding force for you as you're making decisions on how you spend your time and how you run your business and what your pricing models look like, and really everything infused throughout the way you're running and CEOing your business. So it's fun.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you. And thank you so much for being part of it and your support in helping me get there. To be honest, it takes a village, I feel like. Yeah. And so you're a key element of mine. So thank you so much for that.
It's an honor. Absolutely an honor. Maria, as we wrap up here, tell us if there's anything else you would love to share.
Anything else I'd love to share? I would say nothing comes to mind right away, other than if I can be of service to anyone listening, and if anything resonated to you based on what I shared, happy to grab coffee virtually and talk about it.
Or go to London. Amazing. Yes. Yes, that's phenomenal. Thank you, Maria. That's such a generous offer. And we'll put your links in the show notes so people know how to reach out to you over LinkedIn and look at your website. And thank you again for your time and being here today, and for the privilege of being your coach. It's such an honor. And I'm so thrilled that everyone got to hear so much about your story and how you've been evolving your business and your plans for the future. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for what you do.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you soon. Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissalieberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.